Hey guys, today we're going to be talking old school with Richie Aprille, one of the last true Omerta members who, even though he was in no mood for it, was killed by Janice at the young age of 45, making him a young boy at the time of his death. Today we're going to be going over just why I like Richie Aprille, why the guy's one of the most evil characters in the entire Sopranos show, and why I believe Richie's story really resonates with a lot of the other characters that recently got out of jail during their time in the Sopranos. Because a lot of them have similarities that, although they stray a little bit from each other because every person's going to be their own thing, they can still be analyzed and can still create a certain pattern that happens when these people come in and out of jail, which I think is a very interesting thing to go over. Without further ado, let's get right into it. First things first, we're going to talk about Richie Aprille's introduction, which was a lot if you haven't seen it. Guy busts in through the door, basically having this casual conversation with an old friend, Beansy. Then halfway through the conversation, grabs a coffee, a pot, and bam! Smacks it over the fool's head, breaking it. Then the next day, shows up with a car and slams that car right into Beansy. Now, why did he do all these heinous actions, you might ask? Did Beansy, I don't know, sleep with his sister? Did Beansy make fun of his family? Did Beansy kill someone he loved? No, nothing like that. In fact, the only reason he did all this was because for the past 10 years that Richie was in jail, Beansy never visited him, even though he apparently went into jail during a heroin operation that him and Beansy were both a part of. So he was really, really angry that his old pal didn't visit him, so he thought, bam, I'll slam your legs off. Just thought I'd give you that introduction to show you the type of person that we're dealing with Richie. Richie is an unstable man who very much values the old school way of things, like paying respects to people by visiting them in the jail, not ratting on people, different things like listening to your boss and not breaking rank. This is the core of Richie's character, and it's one of the reasons that I find him so respectable at times, even though he's a terrible, terrible person. After Richie does all this stuff, Tony Soprano obviously gets mad. You can't just be taking out guys' legs, making them paralyzed. It's going to cause a racket. It's going to make it tough for business. So Tony's pissed and basically tells him, cut that shit out. You got to go apologize to Beansy. So what does Richie do? Richie shows up to Beansy's hospital bed and basically is like, hey, you need a new ramp for your house since I paralyzed you? Well, if you need a new ramp, I'll install the ramp. Now, Beansy obviously is terrified of Richie because this dude who spent the last 10 years in the can and now came out, paralyzed you, and wants to build you a ramp? What a psycho. So he tells him, go fuck yourself, basically. I don't want the ramp. So what does Richie do? Richie basically forces him to have him build this ramp. He says, I'm going to build the ramp whether you like it or not. And if you go to Tony Soprano, you fuck, then it won't just be your legs that's broken. Basically, this scene encapsulates Richie in a nutshell. Richie is a man who wants to be friendly, wants to be kind, wants to be a lover, but has no clue how because of his sociopathic tendencies. In fact, not even sociopathic tendencies. Nearly everything he does is sociopathic. Even the way he makes love is sociopathic, as shown to us by the scene of him pointing a loaded gun at Janice's head while he has sex with her. Now, me personally, I understand this. Who wouldn't want to kill Janice? But having sex with her, no, get that out of here. But the gun part, definitely understandable. Richie shows these traits during many things. Now, Richie has people that owe him money. He's also a loan shark like the rest of the guys. And in this particular scenario, I'm going to be referring to this, I think it was a shoe store he worked at, or like some kind of hunting lodge store. It really doesn't matter. Guy owned a store, and his name was David Scritino. And David Scritino owed a lot of money to Richie. Richie comes up trying to collect his dues. David Scritino doesn't have the money, making him look like a jerk-off. Richie says, hey, I'll be by later. Getting my money. You better have it. Now, where does Richie find David Scritino the next time he sees him? He finds him gambling with Tony Soprano, gambling away his cash, the money that he owes Richie. And so when Richie complains to Tony Soprano, basically telling him that's not right. This guy owes me money and he's gambling 8 large G's with you. It's not fair. He should pay me my money and you should kick him the hell out for even trying this stuff on one of your soldiers. And what does Tony do? Does he tell David to give him his money? Does he pay respect to this old school mafia member? Or does he tell him to go fuck himself? Well, I'll save you the time of watching the show. He tells him to go fuck himself. Basically, through this, Richie cements that he is never going to get along with Tony Soprano. And basically from this is the start of Richie and Tony Soprano's hatred towards each other. Now, Richie hates Tony. Tony doesn't really hate Richie. He just finds him a nuisance. To be honest, at the essence of Richie's character is disrespect. Richie is a man, real old school, just trying to get respect from everyone, from the game, but no one believes in him because he's been gone so long. No one believes he can do what needs to be done. He barely even understands that you can't talk to the main boss face to face because obviously there could be wires, there could be someone watching, but Richie just can't even comprehend why you wouldn't talk to the main boss. Obviously, Richie has some things that he needs to understand about this new world. And everyone basically disrespects him in the beginning. And that's the core of his problem. So at this point, Richie wants to make peace. So he gives Tony Soprano a jacket. So Richie, trying to make amends, basically gives Tony Soprano a jacket. Now what does Tony Soprano, the kind of guy he is, do? He gives the jacket to his cab driver. Basically a big, I don't care, stupid jacket anyways type move. Just more disrespect thrown back on Richie. And I actually find it kind of interesting when Carmela tells the story of Stasio. Stasio's the cab driver that Tony gives the jacket to. But real briefly before he exits and we don't really see him much again, Carmela tells us his backstory. And it's that in the past, in Poland, I believe it was, in Poland he was a big General Motors manager. Essentially, he owned stores, and those stores had hundreds of workers, and he made a bunch of money off this, and he lived very well off. But when he came to America, he wasn't able to do that as much because he didn't understand the language too well. So he ended up being a lowly cab driver, which reminds me of Richie a lot. A man who back in his day was set up to be he was Jackie's brother, the boss's brother. Obviously, he was going to become boss whenever Jackie died. But he was in the can when that happened. So his spot was taken, his glory stolen, and now he comes back to the game as a lowly cab driver, as a lowly soldier, as a nothing. And this really irks Richie. Here we enter the next arc of Richie's story, which is where Richie tries to get rid of Tony Soprano. Now, who would side with getting rid of Tony Soprano with Richie? Who would side against the great big marshmallow that is Tony Soprano? Well, none other than Uncle Junior, of course. Because in this story, uncles love killing their nephews, as evidenced by Uncle Junior, and then evidenced by Tony Soprano killing Christopher Moltisanti. He plans a plot with Junior Soprano to kill Tony, and they're about to go through with it. And now, Junior, it's actually revealed that he wasn't actually planning on killing Tony. He actually reveals the whole plot to Tony. And so it just throws even more disrespect on Richie, to be honest. I'd like to just bring up that earlier in this story, Richie found out that Christopher had hit Adriana. And he told him, if you want to hit that girl, you better put a ring on her finger. You don't hit a girl that's not married to you. When you put a ring on her finger, who cares? That's your girl. But before then, you don't touch her. And this actually proves to be Richie's undoing. Because as he believes this plot with Tony Soprano is going down, and that he's going to be able to kill him, and maybe even become boss himself one day, he begins talking candidly to Janice Soprano, which is his lover, as I mentioned earlier, about his homosexual son and how he disowned him for being homosexual, because Richie is very against that. He hates them and hates his own son for it as well. And when Janice fights against this and basically tells Richie, why would you care if he's a queer? Like, oh, what's it to you? He's your son and you're just going to disown him for being queer? Like, basically telling him her opinions on the stuff and how she thinks, like, this makes him less of a man for not being able to accept his own son. This pisses off Richie so much that she would try and vouch for his gay son, that he punches her in the face. A good punch, too. Bam! Right to the face. Janice don't take no heat like that. Janice goes right upstairs, grabs a gun, and this is where Richie delivers my favorite line. Janice, I'm in no mood for that stuff. And then Janice, pop, 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 shoots Richie 5 times must have been. Richie's dead on the ground, bleeding out. And that's the end of Richie Aprille. He was a man who, to the very end, got no respect, made nothing of his life in the mob, and ultimately died by a woman, which I'm sure would have really pissed Richie off. I'm sure he would have seen that as incredibly emasculating, to die by the hands of a woman. And I think it's a great way for Richie's story to end, with him dying in the way that he would have hated most, from something that he told someone else specifically not to do. So that's all I have today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will see you next time. This was Sopranos, Richie Aprille. Bye.